Hey guys, I decided to make a video because I was thinking about some of the other things that I had to change about this game after I made the Super Credit and Warbond video a while back. It crept into my mind of some of the more underutilized, or I guess bad, stratagems, and I was thinking of ways that I'd change them so that they could be up to date or have a niche or gimmick that would set them off from other stratagems that you would use over them. For this first video, we'll be looking at the offensive or the red stratagems for now, but if you want me to cover the other stratagems, the blue support or the green defensive ones, let me know if you're interested in that sort of thing. But without further ado, let's get into it. So for the first stratagem that I'd like to get into, it would be the Orbital Precision Strike. This is the first offensive stratagem that you unlock. It is obtained after completing the tutorial for the game, and it serves as your intro as to how offensive stratagems function as a whole, and it's fairly simple, but undoubtedly useful. But just because it is useful doesn't always mean that it's a good. It almost instantly gets outshined by the Eagle 500, and in some pretty often cases can even be outshined by the Siege Artillery. So the proposed changes that I'd want to make is to give it a bit more of uniqueness to it. And it comes in two forms. The first form would be a guided fire capability. This takes heavy inspiration from the M982 Excalibur shell that the US military uses, and it increases the hit chance on a target even if it's moving. And this would function similar to that. So when you throw the stratagem ball down, you can do one of two things. The first option is that you could just do nothing and leave it alone. The shell will simply head towards wherever the stratagem ball is currently at, which gives it a limited targeting ability if you're able to stick the ball onto an enemy. The second, more interesting option is to be able to target individual enemies that you've marked, kind of like how you can mark an enemy and mortars will fire on the said enemy if you have the upgrade for it. So once you throw the stratagem ball down, it'll take longer to call in, but it does this so that it gives you enough time to be able to ping the enemy that you want it to strike. Once you've pinged the enemy, the gun fires and the shell will automatically guide itself towards that enemy. This would allow it to hit a lot more of the bigger, more mobile enemies, like chargers, and would make it a much more easier and user-friendly for all levels. But it will have to have a radius, an initial radius. So like when you throw the stratagem ball down, it'll have a radius of, let's say, like 50 to 75 meters where the ball lands. But it will still be able to track the target that you select, even if they leave that radius. It just has to be marked within the initial radius. Once you mark the target, you will not be able to swap targets, so you have to choose wisely as to which enemy you want the shell to strike. For the second function, this would give it an indirect fire mode, and would allow the precision strike to act more like how real-world artillery is used, and is probably the most straightforward option to add. So it works as follows. You would put in the input code for the orbital precision strike, and then as you hold the stratagem ball, you would open up your minimap and ping the location on the map that you wish for the shell to go to. Once you've marked the location on the map, the stratagem ball automatically activates, you don't have to throw it down, and the shell fires at the location that you've marked. Of course, you wouldn't be able to use this to hit, let's say, stratagem jammers while they're still running for balancing reasons, nor would you be able to use it to hit, like, exostorm caves or the hive tunnels, if that makes sense. Both of these could have ship upgrades corresponding to them, where for the guided mode, I've come up with some, and with some names to go alongside them. So like the first upgrade could be an inertial navigation system, which allows the stratagem to use the rudimentary guiding first, where it'll only go to where the ball is at, which means that you'd have to stick an enemy with the ball for the shell to target. The second upgrade would be a laser designation pod, which allows the stratagem to track individual targets that you've marked with an initial radius of, like, let's say 25 meters. You'd have fly-by-wire control surfaces, which increases the targeting radius by 25, so that it's up to 50 meters. Ultra-high resolution imaging, which increases the targeting radius to 75 meters, and then supermassive recoil springs, which could go for both upgrades, which just increases the precision strike's projectile speed by 20% so that it can come down onto the target that you select much faster. And for the indirect fire modules, it would be simple GPS processing, which allows for the indirect fire mode, but only for locations that you have physically traveled to, not the locations you've marked on the map. The second one would be real-time feedback. It removes the restriction of having to physically travel to the location, but you'd still have to ping the sub-objective if you want to strike there. You'd have to still have to physically ping it, much like how you would ping an enemy, and you'd still have to have line of sight for wherever you want to strike. The third one, democratic information sharing, removes the restriction of having to actually ping the sub-objective or location you want to strike, but you'd still have to have a line of sight when marking somewhere on the map. The fourth one, advanced monitoring systems, removes line of sight restrictions, but locations, like if you want to strike a sub-objective, would still have to be discovered on the map. And the fifth one, predetermined course, removes all restrictions, allowing you to mark anywhere on the map, which removes the final restriction of having to discover the location on the map. You could just ping it, strike it, and you'd be done for right there and then. For our second stratagem, it would be the orbital air burst. This is another one of those stratagems that gets outshined by an eagle, and in this case it gets outshined by the eagle cluster bomb, which is arguably, to an extent, being outshined much worse than the precision strike is. And as a fair warning, I haven't really been able to think of like a super in-depth idea like how I did with the precision strike. So if the suggestions feel a little lazy, this is why. But for the first change I'd want to change would be to kind of just copy and paste the indirect fire ability from the precision strike over to this. No real changes to the airburst shell itself. The second option would be to just buff what it does rather than giving it a gimmick. So it would be more cluster pellets housed within the shell, an increased shell fire rate, and an overall longer stratagem duration so that it can fire more shells. The third option would be just so that you give the air burst heavy armor penetration, but keep the stats and what it is all the same, so that it gets some separation from the Eagle cluster bomb. As you can make the argument that the cluster bombs have to be lighter and therefore less powerful, so that the Eagle can actually equip and use them, whereas the Orbital Airburst is just one big fuck you shell with a lot of power behind it. And alternatively, you could mix the heavy armor penetration one along with the increased pellets, fire rate, and duration if you so choose, but I'd want to keep these as like 3 separate ones, a one or the other sort of thing. For the 3rd, 4th, and 5th stratagem, it would have to be the EMS strike, the gas strike, and the Gatling barrage. These are pretty short changes, so that's kind of the reason why I lumped these together. For the EMS strike, I propose adding a small amount of arc damage applied while in the stun field, or boosting arc damage when using something like an arc thrower and shooting into the stun field. And then once the stun field dissipates, it'll add a temporary slowed and confused status, much like what gas does, but without having the gas damage over time to it. And speaking of the gas, for the gas strike, and for, I guess, gas as a whole, so like the grenades or the sterilizer and all that, just let it be flammable or explosive. There's vents on certain swamp maps in the game that if you shoot, they blow up and ignite the surrounding area with fire. So we could just take that concept and place it onto gas, you know? And for the Gatling barrage, this is also another pretty simple one. Just bring back the experimental incendiary barrage from the... I want to say it was in December, near the Christmas time. And just make that default while also increasing the RPM of the Gatling gun so that you have a bigger volume of fire. And for our final offensive stratagem on the list, we have the Eagle 110 rocket pods. These things feel incredibly weak, even though on paper they should be really good, which puts them in a bit of a sad state, as despite theoretically having more damage than the recoilless rifle, it just doesn't seem to do that much damage in general. And the rockets per shot do less damage than the recoilless for some reason, despite being a bigger caliber and having more kinetic energy because it's fired from an aircraft. So it's gonna require a redux, which is, you know, what we're here to explain. So first thing we'll do is change it from firing multiple rockets at a time to just firing one missile, one large missile. It'll do a little more damage than a single bomb from the orbital airstrike, but it'll do less damage than the 500 kilogram. It'll keep the automatic targeting that the rockets already have, and because it'll be a missile and not a rocket, and therefore being able to be fired from a much further standoff distance, it would enable the use inside of anti-air dead zones, and if you really want, even the stratagem jammers. But the code will just be scrambled, like if you were in a cognitive disruptor. You'll have one less use, knocking it down to 3 uses total, and we'll rename it from the Eagle 110mm rocket pods to like an Eagle missile strike. Would these changes be overpowered in some cases? Yeah, absolutely, but you know, this is a PvE game. This isn't like Call of Duty or something, so it's okay to be a little overpowered. Like, what are the enemies gonna do? Complain on Reddit or something? But for now, that's all the stratagems that I'd change. If you have any thoughts or opinions on this, I'd love to hear them, whether it's about what stratagems you'd change, what stratagems you'd add to this list, or what your critiques are of my proposed changes. All of it I would love to hear. And like I said in the beginning, if you have any interest in me covering the other stratagems, the support and defensive ones, let me know. And so that I can get to work on it. But other than that, have a wonderful day, and good luck hell diving.